Hello, and welcome back to the FreeMelon Society. I am Eli Martyr. Thank you for joining me, and we are going to be chatting a little bit about fasting and proper definitions of fasting and clearing up some of the ambiguity about how we refer to this phenomenon of cleansing and detoxing. Also, apologies. I've had to work since earlier in July away from home. Got called out to do some stunt doubling on a show. So I've been away from all of my editing gear and all of my stuff. So, and I don't have my car holder here for my little device, so I can't even prop up my camera to give you a free log with video, so I'm gonna have to settle for audio, so you'll have to accept my apology, but I can at least do an audio log for you guys here, and that's what we are going to do until I am back at home after this little gig is done, this little film gig is done. I'm not exactly sure when it ends, probably around early August or so. So anyhow, let's get into the topic. We are talking about fasting. What is fasting? What is not fasting? Okay. Now, there's one thing that we have to recognize about language and the way we use language. And there's a concept in logic where in order for a term to be understood, it must be one thing, and it cannot be everything else. Okay? Let me repeat that. In order to be understood, a term must be something, and it cannot be everything else. So if I say, I am eating lettuce, if the term lettuce also could mean dog, cat, signpost, garlic bread, shoe, and sock, right? Then my use of the term lettuce is not understood because it is too generally conceived as something else. In order for lettuce to be understood as lettuce, lettuce must mean only lettuce, right? And if there are different types of lettuce, well, we give those separate definitions, or we add additional terminology to the word lettuce. So we would add red leaf lettuce. We would say green leaf lettuce. We would say iceberg lettuce. Okay, so this is the purpose of language, right? The purpose of language is to clearly define and clearly distinguish terms from one another, so that you may be understood in relating what you want to talk about, what you want to mean, or what your intended meaning is. Okay? If I tell you I want to go to the movies tonight, and by movies I mean I want to cook pasta, well, that's not going to be any type of effective form of communication, because going to the movies must mean a specific type of activity to the exclusion of all other activities. Otherwise, you will not be understood, and that will lead to confusion, misunderstanding, and just general inefficient communication. Okay? So that should be a concept that is very easily understood. When we talk about fasting, there are all sorts of different forms and shapes that fasting, quote-unquote fasting, takes when we use it in our terminology. Now, in order to be properly understood when we're talking about fasting, we need to define our terms very, very clearly. We say water fasting, we say dry fasting, but then we have all these other terms. We say we're fruit fasting, we say we're juice fasting. People will say they're fasting when they're drinking lemon juice and maple syrup, and fasting with water and vegetable broth, right? So we have all of these different types of hybrids of fasting. Now, let's be clear. There is a very, very specific set of physiological phenomena that occur in the presence of a body or organism that has been abstaining from all forms of nutrition. Okay? Now, with the addition of any sort of even minimal nutritional or caloric intake in the body, that specific set of conditions fails to manifest, fails to reproduce. Thus, when we are defining the term fasting, if we apply the term fasting to the complete abstinence of food, whereby that very specific set of physiological conditions arise, and we also apply the term fasting to other types of food restriction, then what we are doing is we are confusing the pool of terminology in which fasting is used and applied. The original term for fasting means abstinence. So the intended meaning of the word is a complete vacation, complete abstinence from food. When you are juicing, fruit juices, vegetable juices, or any other kinds of juices, you are not fasting. You cannot be fasting. You are simulating a fast in some way, shape, or form because of the simplicity and the lessened digestive burden that is being placed on your system. Yes, but you are not fasting. You cannot be fasting because you are taking in nutrition. And if the digestive physiology is stimulated into using calories and taking in energy from the outside, then the body will not go into the same physiological set of conditions that fasting brings about. So therefore, you cannot be fasting. Again, clearly and obviously, because the same conditions do not arise in fasting as in juicing. So they require different terminology. So we should try, and I've used it too because it's just so common that it just kind of rolls off the tongue now. But really, we should be clear, right? Again, higher degrees of definition give higher degrees of clarity. And so we should try to define exactly what we mean. And, you know, a lot of you might think that this is being picky. Think about the confusion out there between, now, and I've talked about it before, but sugar, right? How people abuse the term sugar, and they lump all forms of simple carbohydrates under the umbrella term of sugar, which leads to so much confusion about and fear about people eating fruit and whatnot and juice because it's quote unquote contained sugar, or it contains sugar. But you know, you can't be, and the reason that there is this confusion is why? Because of faulty definitions. It is erroneous and unclear, ambiguous defining of terms that leads to this confusion. So you know, it sounds like we're being picky here. We're not being picky. We're trying to clear up the field. We're trying to be well understood. So when we're talking about juicing, we should try to avoid using the term fasting, because it's simply not what happens to the body when you are fasting. It's two totally different phenomena. If you are in a state of caloric restriction and you are using finer food than juices, and you are using, say, lemon juice or water with lemon, or water with lemon and maple syrup, or some sort of sweetener with water, or salt, right? So people are somehow convinced that salt water is a good thing to be using while fasting. I don't know. I'm not sure where this is coming from, but it's really not a good idea. It's a stimulant. Salt is not necessarily a nutrient, but it is a stimulant. It's a wild stimulant in the body. And you don't want to be stimulating your digestive system while you're trying to fast, because the fast is trying to do one thing, the stimulant is doing the complete opposite. So it's not a good idea to be having any kind of salt or other stimulant. You don't want coffee. You don't. So if you're doing any form of nutrition, right, or nutriment or stimulant while you are fasting, you're not fasting. Okay? You can't be fasting, because in order to fast, in order to bring about the physiological detoxing conditions that only pure 100% fasting brings, you need to be in the complete abstinence of all forms of primary stimulation and secondary stimulation of all forms of nutriment from the system. Okay, so you are not fasting when you're juicing, salt water, or coffee, or any other form of subtle nutrition. You are not fasting when these are what you're doing. You are simply undergoing caloric restriction. Maybe extreme caloric restriction, but so long as the body is stimulated, you are not fasting. Okay, you are simulating fasting, but not actually fasting. Actual true fasting is only accomplished when one fasts to the abstinence of all food and drink and consumes either only water or nothing. Okay, that is what fasting is. That and only that can occupy the term fasting. Otherwise, we should either come up with definitions of other types of caloric restriction or calorically restricted diet. We should come up with other terms, or just use different terminology. So, if we're juicing, we're just saying we're juicing, or juice cleansing, or juice detoxing, or whatever. You're not really juice fasting. Okay? I was at the store the other day, and I'm buying some groceries, and I overhear this man talking to his children. And he says to his kids, yeah, of course, we're going to grab some broccoli and cauliflower, but we're not going to grab too much fruit, okay, guys? Because if we have too much fruit, we're going to have too much sugar. And this is what he's teaching his kids. And it's just like, oh my God, it can be frustrating. This is the problem with definition of terms, right? This is why this is important, because without these clear definitions, someone at some point is going to get confused. And so I'm not trying to be picky. I'm just trying to help to demystify and help to, declutter. So anyway, those are the thoughts for the day. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to getting back into town so that I can do my regular videos and my regular editing routine once I am back from this work trip, which is occupying all of my time. So my apologies once again, but thank you for listening. If this was helpful, like this video and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and we will see you next time on the FreeMelon Society.